Welcome to the Gamma Partner Program feature artist interviews. Today we chat with Ixchel, who's a self-described witch and an eclectic artist creating through the seasons. We discuss all things from art to emotion to inspiration and more. Can't wait for you to listen to this brilliant interview.
All right. So welcome, Ishel. Pleasure to have you here. Always, it's an honor that you're part of the Gamma Partner Program. We obviously love you and love your art. And, I remember seeing the Bad Bitches collection when you first, dropped some work on Gamma. And here we are today. For people who don't know you or do know you, give yourself a bit of an introduction. A little bit about you as a person, as an artist. Go for it.
Cool. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure. And honestly, I'm always super honored to do any kind of partnership with Gamma or, just working side by side with you guys. It's amazing. When I initially, onboarded with Gamma, it was with Bad Bitches. And for those that don't know, it was basically me taking some time to myself and just kind of playing around with my art. Was trying to find a little bit of more of the style that I wanted to do, and it just kind of happened. It was this mess of emotions tangled with my art at the same time, and it sort of flew out of me. Um, it turned into a project that I didn't realize was going to even be a project because it was, like I said, essentially me just doodling around and playing around with my art and not feeling pressure to do anything whatsoever. And I absolutely fell in love with it. Every time I see Good Kitty's profile picture, I'm just like, yeah, that's my bad bitch.
I know it must
It's
be amazing.
amazing.
Must be amazing to see people wearing your art, sporting your art, showing it off on Twitter. How does that feel?
That is incredible. I would have never, ever in a million years thought that. I mean, I don't think I say this often, but art was never, well, I'm not gonna say never, but it was not a career that I was thinking about. I saw it as a hobby. I enjoyed making art. I, liked basically creating for myself mostly. And I was that kind of artist that would have, drawings and sketchbooks, but would never show them to anybody. They were just kind of hidden away in my bedroom. It was a part of me that nobody got to really see very often. And when they did, it was minimal stuff. I worked at a preschool, so I would do kind of like little haunted houses and stuff for bulletin boards and things like that, but nothing really serious.
So that's really interesting because I was gonna ask you, like what drew you into art? And then I suppose, you just mentioned you worked at a preschool. That's really fascinating. Do you think that that had an influence on your style or things that you wanted to draw?
Yeah, I that was definitely an opening for me. Because before then, like I said, it was just me doodling and in my sketchbook, kind of the way that I would pass my time. Um, I was kind of a geek in a way when I was in school, so I kept mostly to myself, and I love to immerse myself in books, and I would draw the things that sometimes came from books. And as crazy as it sounds, because everybody loves Harry Potter was a big thing for me. So I remember I would draw like the dragons and stuff in my sketchbook, and they were just, like I said, drawings for myself. So when I started working at the preschools, I let myself sort of be more creative. I would do activities with kids that was, on the more artsy side. And I remember at first I was the classic teacher of everything has to be perfect. So I'm like, you guys, we're gonna do it this way. We're gonna cut out like this. Everything's gonna be cookie cutter. And then eventually I realized what a big mistake that was. I wasn't letting them be themselves and I wasn't letting them express themselves. And so I sort of just let that wall down. And I was like, all right, we're not going to do this anymore. You guys are going to do whatever you want. And I started doing it for myself too, because I started exploring art more and more. And where at one point it wasn't a possibility for me to pursue art, it eventually became this is the only thing I want to do with my life. Career wise, this is the only thing. Like I can do other things, but this, if I don't do this, a part of me is going to die.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really interesting. And it's so interesting to think that, the lessons that you were teaching the kids, you then implemented in your own life. It's such an important lesson. How
It's
do you
very
how do you take
important.
that into, I guess, your like creative expression and your sort of like freedom of expression? Obviously, like Bad Bitches is a little bit more like, edgy, so to speak. And then you've got your print, which is a bit different. We'll pull up Bad Bitches whilst you're speaking. Yeah, but tell us about, I guess, yeah, tell us about the Bad Bitches collection. What inspires you, like where you go when you're creating something like that versus, when you're creating the fairies for prints and whatnot elsewhere, start
Yeah.
with that.
With Bad Bitches, it was very much because I have this side of me that gets very intensely emotional. And when my emotions are pretty intense, I usually have to try to, calm down from that, bring myself down so I don't do anything impulsive. And that day that I started creating those, I was pretty intense. I was actually pretty upset, and I was just kind of over, feeling like anybody was going to have any say in what I did, or, how I acted in a sense of speaking. Like if it was going to be, something that it was going to be something that I decided for myself, basically.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of like, how do I explain it? I basically stopped caring what other people thought. That was that point in time where I was just like, I'm gonna stop caring. It's not about everybody else. It's about me. And it sounded really selfish because I would have never thought that way. But I'm like, sometimes you have to be a little bit selfish. You have to put yourself first, and you have to be able to say, like, this is, for me, not for anybody else, but simply for me. And there's something empowering about that. And so those pictures, those pieces that I drew were basically that, like, just kind of, being in your like vibe, and being in that energetic, like, empowerment within you that you normally hold back because you want to people please, or you want to be like a little bit more submissive because that's what people expect of you. And I was just kind of over. I was like, no, that's it. We're not doing that anymore. That's not a side of me that's going to be there for people to be able to, control.
And it's amazing that art inspired that for you. How has that transition been?
I kind of balance through it, like I don't want it to be completely that all the time. And I think that's where with fairies, I did that. I was like, I want to show the softer side, the more colorful side of my feelings and emotions and world. And so I started, playing around with the lighter colors there. And I don't know if anybody has noticed in any of my past pieces, because they're not exactly on gamma, but I do enjoy a lot of what is the vaporwave color palette, and like lo-fi and synthwave. So I definitely put those colors in there, and I was like, to me, that just felt so ethereal and magical in a way. And I really love that. And that piece, for some reason, I was speaking about it recently, and I'm not sure why, because usually with pieces, I just kind of put like, hey, my next work, work in progress sort of deal. But with that one piece in specific, there was a lot of melancholy type to it. Like it felt almost on the verge of sad, but not exactly sad, more like accepting. And all the captions that I posted with it were around that same nature. And so finally, when I posted the description of it, it was just kind of like, this is it. It's perfect. It ties in with the title of it. And the title came up with a song that I was listening to that was saying, I was missing you, but also it was kind of like she was, it was okay for her to let go, and she accepted that she had let go, and it was just perfect. It tied in perfectly.
I
And
love
I,
that.
I
Yeah.
think that's a big deal for me, because in the past I've had a hard time accepting certain things and letting go of things, and now I'm just kind of like, you know what, when it's time to let go, that's, there's nothing else that you can do. It's just that moment to do it.
Yeah, and it's amazing to express such emotion in your art. Like you said, like music also played a part in that one. What is the creative process like for you? So when when you've got a concept, and I know that you're sort of working on more in that series, and you obviously have like other art in the pipeline, where do you go? And then also, how do you how do you sort of convey that emotion through your art to your collectors or to the people that you're then going to be displaying your art to? Because that's obviously a very, I guess, like a brave thing, perhaps for some, but also, yeah, like a unique experience to know that the emotion that you're pouring into the canvas, so to speak, is going to be out there to the public too.
Oh, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. I think I've let go a little bit more and more, and I'm not I'm not usually normally the kind of person that likes to put my emotions out there. So I think with my art, it's a little bit easier to, because expressing it in words for me is so very just agonizing. And when I use my art, that's almost one of the perfect mediums, because even when I write it out and I write, like, let's say I write a piece of poetry and put it out there, I'm always terrified of what people are going to feel when they're reading it. And it's, obviously it comes from an emotional place for me. So I'm like, can they see through me? But with the art, it's a little bit different, because yes, I'm putting my emotions, but it's also up to everybody else's perception of it. How they tie into it with their emotions and what they feel when they see it. So it's not as, it's terrifying, but not as terrifying in a sense. And a lot of the inspiration does come from my emotions. I do. It is very much tied into that, but it's also sometimes with the music that I listen to. Sometimes there's a song that just like the vibe for some reason for me. It's just like it's magical, and I'm like, yes, this is the perfect vibe. It might be like a song that's a Latino song, or it might be a ballad, or like because I listen to all sorts of music. But if in that moment that song makes me feel something and inspire something within me, like it's a source of inspiration for sure. And other moments in life, or my culture specifically, I haven't done that one just yet. There's not a lot of art that I've done right now that's tied into my culture, but it's definitely something that I'm planning to do. And recently, I want to say I was at a restaurant and I saw this ceramic pottery. It's called Talavera, and it was so beautiful. The hand painted design that it had on it, and the colors are just so vibrant and bold. And I was like, I definitely want to do something that's kind of reminds me of that. And I guess because it's also emotional in a way, because for me, when I was younger, I would go to Mexico a lot with my parents, and those were literally the best moments of my life, was being over there for like the whole summer, the whole winter vacation time. And it was just like the most precious moments of my life. And so it definitely mixes in with what I want to draw at some point too.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's amazing where you can take so many different inspirations from. And, whether it be culture or, like you said, things that you see at a restaurant, or just music or colors that you like. What do you think drew you into like enjoying that color palette and using that anime style for Missing You?
For Missing You, the anime style, well, I'm a big fan of anime overall. And then the first time I remember that I really even liked anime, I didn't even know what it was. I had no idea it was a genre. I had no clue that people watched, anime or read manga books or anything like that. But I remember there was this kid in high school. He's sitting there and he's just drawing away. And I happened to look at it. I was like, wow, that looks so cool. I was like, that's amazing. I was like, how did you do that? He's just like, yeah, I've just been doing it for a while. And at that point, all I drew was, random little doodles and stuff like that. Sometimes I did a couple, like some line work in ink, but I hadn't really drawn characters like that. And I was like, I have to do this. I have to, find a way to do this kind of style of art. And I remember I did this piece. It was like 18 by 24, and I still have it. It's somewhere at my dad's, which I really need to, go pick it up and post it up somewhere on my wall. But that was the first anime piece I'd ever done, and it was just black and white ink on this big old piece of paper. And I was just like, yeah, I was like, that looks beautiful. I want to do that. And then eventually somebody showed me. I think it was the first anime I saw was Attack on Titan. I was just like, wow. I was like, I really love the line work on this stuff. Like, this is so cool. I was like, I had no idea about this world. But and it's like I said I before, I'm not sure what it is. I think it's the eyes for me specifically. The eyes can be so expressive with anime and manga
Mm.
that it the expression of it alone kind of brings so much to the table. And then, with the right line work, sometimes depending on what kind of style you're trying to set up, it speaks volumes. And the like I said, the color palette was just that I used was along the lines of what I have seen in vaporwave art and like just synth wave and stuff like that. because I like watching a lot of those ambiance videos on my computer while I'm working, and the bold colors are very much a thing for me. I enjoy the brightness of them, and you know how like a very bright hue will look against a very dark hue. The contrast is it's it's very appealing to my eye. And so I wanted to make that with the fairy. I wanted to create something that was soft but bold and, you know, like high contrast in a way. Um, and I feel like I executed almost to the point where I wanted it to be. I was very happy with the final product of it.
Oh, well, I definitely collected it. I loved it as well. And so that's really interesting. I guess, you know, being so authentic and being so engaged with your own artwork and creating what you want to speak, that must be very important. A lot of creators ask me, you know, what should I create? And then my advice to them is to create what you want to create and to feel authentic about it. Seems like it really drove you.
Yeah, I had a hard time with it at first. I spent a good like chunk of years, I want to say, with art block. I had like ideas and I would imagine things, but I wasn't exactly sure how to put it down. And so I did struggle a bit with it. And sometimes I think mainly what caused my art blockage for me was my need for perfectionism. I'm very much a control freak, and I am very much a perfectionist. And I told myself, I'm like, if you constantly look for every single detail to be perfect, you're never going to actually do anything because you're so worried about it being perfect. And most of the time, I'm like, you're probably the only one seeing that. Nobody else has even noticed it except you. And I still do it. I zoom in so much that I'm like, okay, let me, you know, erase this tiny little one pixel that's out of place. It's insanity. And I've been working through it a lot more, so I'm not as you know, bent on being super duper perfect. I'm like, if it feels good to me, like it's about how I feel about it, not how do I think it looks, then it's good. Then we're done. And normally now I've been a lot better at being able to tell when I'm done with the piece. I'm like, ah, yeah, I can breathe. Whereas other times I'm like, no, I'm still like hammering away. I'm like, I still got more to go. And that I'm not sure how to explain it. I'm not sure if other artists feel like that. Like you just hit this point where you're like, that's it, it's done. It's done. You just know it, and intuitively you know it's done. Um, but yeah, that was my biggest art block was me and my need for perfectionism, and I really tried to let that go because it caused such a disruption. And then when it came to wanting to, you know, the kind of art that I wanted to do, I did hit also some obstacles there. When I first started doing NFTs at all, I was drawing these little potatoes, and they were really cute. They were based off of these ridiculous, very horrid looking potatoes that were farting. And it was just kind of a joke. I just did it on a whim as a joke. It wasn't even like I wasn't selling it or anything. It was just for fun. Um, but I was like, you know what? I was like, these could be cute. I was like, they can be little kawaii potatoes. So I started making these little kawaii potatoes, and they look really adorable. You know, they had the kawaii expressions, and I played a lot with some bold colors there too. But I definitely knew inside I was like, this isn't exactly, you know, at the end of the day when I'm done doing my art, it didn't feel satisfying enough to me. It was like I was doing it, but I wasn't hitting that satisfaction point of like I am happy with my art. It was like I'm happy with the progress that I'm making, but I wasn't exactly happy with what I was creating. And that's essentially why I took that time to do Bad Bitches, which was not supposed to be Bad Bitches. It just turned out to be Bad Bitches. And I that was that moment where I was like, yeah, I'm just kind of gonna, you know, let the wall down, you know, just art for the pleasure of arting, not for anything else. And it's sort of fumbled out of me, and I think it was definitely the snowball moment for me because I've slowly been snowballing into the art that I want to create more instead of the art that I'm feeling forced to create.
And that's really interesting because I was going to ask you, you know, what advice would you give creators who are considering moving into the space, or even creators who are in the space? You know, I guess like what wisdom would you pass on to them? Because yeah, you just touched on some really interesting points, but is there anything more you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely say that if at any point in time you feel like you're forcing anything, then it's the moment to step away. Even if you're doing a piece that does resonate with you and you're working on it, but you don't feel like at that moment you're getting anywhere with it, take a step back because you're forcing it. And it's the way that I've seen it before and that I've explained it to other people is you it's basically a puzzle. Anything that you're doing is almost like a puzzle. And sometimes you got the right pieces, but you're forcing them the wrong way. And if you keep forcing it, like you're just gonna jam the puzzle and you're gonna break it apart. So I'm like, take a step back, take a breather, go back to it, and then usually it clears things up. You get like this clarity moment and you're like, yeah, I can jump back into it and I feel good about it. But forcing anything is like the worst thing that you can do because you're pushing yourself to do something that you don't even want to do. And that's, I personally believe that whatever you're feeling at that moment gets poured into whatever you're creating. And that's not the kind of energy that you want to put in anything that you want to send out to anybody else.
Mm. Yeah, really pertinent advice. And what can we expect, from you moving forward?
Oh, how do I say this without putting too much out there
Of
or too
course.
much pressure on myself? I'm definitely thinking about, exploring different styles. I will say that. One of the ones that you already know of is, I want to tie in some cultural artwork there. And I'm Mexican, but I'm also indigenous, so like I want to tap into both of those. So that's I'll throw those in there for right now. But
No, that's
definitely, yeah, definitely look into a lot more of, I don't want to call them collections per se, but
mm,
I want to call them themes, I suppose.
mhm.
Themes. Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. And like I said at the very start of this, it's a pleasure to have you as dropping work on Gamma and being part of the partner program. We can't wait to see what else you're going to drop with us and around the place. And we obviously just want the artists who we work with to win. So once again, thank you so much for being a part of it. And for people who are watching, where how can they follow you or where can they learn more about you?
Yeah, mostly on Twitter. So if you just, I think you could just search Ixchel, Ixchel. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. A pleasure to have you on.
No, thank you for having me.